Congratulations, true crime addicts. We've survived another week. It is Friday, August 8th, 2025. This week, police investigate Bryan Kohberger for another break-in. Police in Tennessee arrest killer fugitive. And what does Woody Allen know about Jeff Epstein? All this and more. Stay tuned.
Yes, super excited. We are all pumped to have James Renner.
James Renner
Suspects that James Renner has zeroed in on.
James Renner once again drops a bombshell.
Investigative journalist, reporter James Renner, who's been on the podcast, longtime friend of mine.
And welcome back to True Crime This Week with me, your host, James Renner. I've moved the studio. It's in another secure location. I think it's going to work out. We're still ironing out the bugs, but let's get to the show here. Last weekend, I was up at the West Sound Crime Con. The West Sound Crime Con, that's up in Washington State off of Puget Sound. And that was run by an author named Greg Olson, who is a good friend of mine. There are many other authors there over the weekend, and it was a nice festival. We were in Bremerton, we were in Bainbridge, all over the place, west of Seattle. I imagine that's going to happen again in the future, so keep an eye out for that. But speaking of crime cons, CrimeCon Denver is coming up the first weekend in September. That's September 5th through 7th, and you should come because it's a crazy show. It's the biggest convention to do with true crime that's out there. If you haven't seen it, you got to see it at least once. So if you're planning on going and you still don't have tickets, use my last name for a super sweet discount. That's Renner, R-E-N-N-E-R. You could spell it backwards and still get the same discount. As always, I want to thank my buddy Walter for manning the camera. Walter's just back from starring in a new American Eagle commercial. So that should go well. Let's get to the top stories. That's what you came for. That's my job. Every Friday morning, I bring you the true crime news that you might have missed during the week. You don't have to watch the news. It's depressing. If you're a true crime addict, just come here every Friday morning. I'll give you the scoop, everything you might have missed in the world of true crime. The New York Post reported this week that police in Washington State investigated Bryan Kohberger as a suspect in an eerily similar break-in that occurred a year before he murdered 4 University of Idaho students. In October 2021, police in Pullman, Washington, where Kohberger later attended Washington State University, received a call from a sorority house. A 20-year-old student said she'd woken up at 3:30 a.m. to see a man in a burgundy ski mask enter her room, and he had a knife in his hand. The intruder apparently thought she was still sleeping, though, because he came closer to the bed, and when he did, the woman kicked him in the stomach, and he ran out of the house. Nice job. Kohberger would go on to commit a similar crime where he wore a ski mask and also used a knife to murder Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Goncalves, Zana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin on November 13, 2022. That was less than 8 miles away from where this other crime occurred. The incident in Pullman occurred 8 months before Kohberger moved to the area, though. However, it happened on the same weekend that the university's Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology, of which he was a student, was hosting an incoming student event. So far, police have found no evidence that Kohberger was in Washington State at that time. I think this has to be Kohberger, though, right? What are the chances? Thanks to Law and Order, we kind of think these sorts of crimes happen all the time, but these stories are incredibly rare. The MO matches Kohberger, and it happened at the school he would attend 8 miles away from the site of the murders he committed. The best we can hope for at this point is that he will spill the beans to some prison snitch, which is quite possible since he has about 70 years in prison to try to keep his mouth shut. Yesterday, NPR released never-before-seen video of the January 6th insurrection that shows a current Department of Justice official telling rioters to kill police. On camera, Jared Weiss is seen calling police officers Nazis and Gestapo and then repeatedly yelling, "Kill 'em, kill 'em," when rioters assaulted the officers. Weiss worked in counterterrorism for the FBI from 2004 to 2017. In 2021, he was working as a consultant in Bend, Oregon, where he traveled to when he traveled to D.C. to support Donald Trump on that January 6th. And on that day, Weiss entered the Capitol building through a door that was forced open, and then he exited about 10 minutes later through a broken window. It was 2 hours after that he was seen urging rioters to kill police, and he admitted to as much on the stand during his trial. However, before his trial concluded, Trump pardoned the insurrectionists, and he was never convicted. Weiss is currently employed as a senior advisor for the Department of Justice, where he is reviewing alleged weaponization of law enforcement by liberal Democrats. His boss is conservative activist Ed Martin, who believes January 6th was staged by liberals, and as such, some of the violence was justified. Martin also believes our government should make reparations to the insurrectionists for any money they lost during their arrest and trials. A spokesperson for the DOJ told NPR, quote, "Jared Weiss is a valued member of the Justice Department, and we appreciate his contributions to our team," end quote. Now, I think at this point, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Trump ends up hiring Bryan Kohberger to run the Department of Health and Human Services. I think it's a matter of time at this point, I think. Here's the last top story before we get to cold case updates and all the goodies after the break. I genuinely believe that all people have some good in them. The more I investigate true crime, the more I come to believe this. You would think the opposite would be true, but I've met people on death row who are doing their best to make amends. I've met killers who show remorse, and the statistics clearly show that violent crime is on a downswing. It's happening less and less every year since the 1990s. But every once in a while, I find a story that comes along that makes me doubt humanity a little bit. There's a developing story out of Tennessee that has no reason or excuse that I can find. It began July 29th when a baby was found still strapped into a car seat placed in the front yard of a house in Tigret, about 80 miles northeast of Memphis. The baby was fine, by the way, and that's the only good news in this story. Authorities were able to figure out who the baby's parents were, and when they went to check on them, they immediately went to check on them because, who leaves a baby on a stranger's lawn? Police then discovered the baby's parents, 21-year-old James Wilson and 20-year-old Adriana Williams, and they had both been murdered. Adriana's mother, Courtney Rose, and her younger brother, Braden, had also been killed, according to CNN. That's 4 dead bodies. The investigation quickly focused on the boyfriend of Courtney Rose's sister. This is all tangled up into relationships, but they focused on the boyfriend of Courtney Rose's sister, who had a rap sheet longer than that thing we saw at the end of 28 years later. His name is Austin Robert Drummond, and he's 28 years old and has spent most of his adult life in prison. In 2013, when he was just 16 years old, Drummond robbed a Circle K in Jackson. During the robbery, he pointed a pistol at the store employee. He got 10 years in prison for that, and then he got 3 more years tacked on for threatening the jurors in his trial. He was only recently released, but was facing more charges for drugs and an attempted murder that allegedly happened while he was incarcerated. Now, while Drummond was serving time, he apparently began an intimate relationship with a corrections officer there. That woman was Courtney Rose's sister. Police say Drummond was also a member of the Vice Lords gang, which is apparently a real thing and not some bad guys from a Nintendo game. Since the baby was found, Drummond has been on the run. But on Tuesday, residents of Jackson, Tennessee reported seeing a man in the woods and called police. Police responded immediately, and there they found Drummond unarmed, and they quickly arrested him. Now, during the manhunt, 3 others were arrested and charged with aiding this fugitive. No motive has yet been given for the killings, and maybe we don't get one in this case. Maybe Drummond is the exception that proves the rule, a killer with no reason other than an evil nature. Those are the top stories this week. Lots more to come after the break. I want to talk about a serial killer who was paroled in South Australia. We got to talk about Woody Allen. So stay tuned. I'll be back in 2 and 2.
Please hang up and try again.
And we're back with more True Crime this week, brought to you by Oceanic Airlines. Our skies lead to your destiny. A serial killer was released on parole in South Australia this week, according to People.com. Sounds a little crazy, right? Who would let a serial killer free? Well, wait until you hear the details about this case. It might change your mind a bit. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. James Vlasakis was just a teenager when he was recruited by his stepfather, John Bunting, and another man named Robert Wagner, not the actor, to help him murder 11 people, all of which were relatives and friends of John Bunting. Vlasakis killed 4 of the people himself. A 4th person was convicted of helping to cover up the killings. But everything fell apart in 1999 when police discovered dismembered remains inside plastic barrels filled with hydrochloric acid in Snowtown, South Australia. Detectives then traced the barrels to Bunting and his crew. Bunting and Wagner remain in prison where they are serving out life sentences. Vlasakis testified against them at trial. He was 19 years old at that time. Vlasakis himself was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 26 years, which means he was paroled as soon as he was eligible. Francis Nelson, the parole board chief, said that Vlasakis, quote, does not represent a risk to the community, end quote. Though I'd be surprised if he was released into Nelson's community. So what do you think? Should a killer go free if he was a teen when he committed the murders? Is it possible to rehabilitate a serial killer? I guess we're going to find out. Virginia Giuffre's brother, Sky Roberts, and his wife Amanda appeared on CBS Mornings this week to speak out against the possibility that Trump may pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Giuffre was trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell when she was underage, after Epstein met the girl at Mar-a-Lago and stole her away from Trump. One of her alleged abusers was Prince Andrew. Giuffre died by suicide earlier this year. Epstein, too, as you know, is dead. Possibly by suicide? Who knows? Which leaves Maxwell as the only person answering for these crimes. But in recent weeks, Trump has found himself at the center of the scandal again, and members of his Justice Department have been meeting with Maxwell to hash out some kind of deal. After the meeting, Maxwell was moved to a minimum security camp in Tallahassee, and Trump has suggested a pardon is not out of the question. This is what Amanda Roberts had to say about it. Quote, "It makes me sick. It makes survivors sick. Survivors are saying no to leniency, no to a pardon. Will you silence them again?" End quote. Probably he will. The mega crowd on social media are already turning the narrative to suggest that Maxwell was just a scapegoat for Epstein's crimes. But Giuffre's family knows better. Before her death, Giuffre told reporters that Maxwell was, quote, worse than Epstein, end quote. On Tuesday morning, the state of Tennessee executed Byron Black without first deactivating his implanted heart defibrillator. And things did not go well. Black was 69 years old and had an implanted cardio defibrillator because he suffered from congestive heart failure. As the date of his execution approached, Black's attorneys tried unsuccessfully to warn prison officials that stopping his heart when he had a defibrillator inside his chest was maybe not such a good idea. But congestive heart failure wasn't Black's only issue. He also suffered from dementia, kidney failure, and brain damage. But Tennessee was like, boring, let's get on with it. Black was given phenobarbital as a lethal injection drug used to stop his heart and kill him. But he remained alive for 10 minutes following the injection and raised his head off the gurney several times. Quote, "It's hurting so bad," he could be heard saying. With such a massive dose of phenobarbital, he should have been unable to move at all. But, the defibrillator was trying to keep him alive. Crazy. He died at 10:43 a.m. Just a quick reminder that the United States is the last developed country that executes its prisoners. It keeps us in league with wonderful places like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Yemen. The New York Times released a story this week that revealed a letter from a Hollywood director that was sent to Jeffrey Epstein on the occasion of Epstein's 63rd birthday. I'll give you 3 guesses. Yeah, it's Woody Allen. In the letter, Woody Allen recalls how Epstein's New York City home was often filled with young women and said Epstein reminded him of Dracula, and he meant that as a good thing. Apparently, Woody was fond of old movies starring Bela Lugosi as Count Dracula and liked how the vampire would have 3 young females servicing his every need. Woody and his wife, Suni Previn, attended dinner parties at Epstein's house. And if you're too young to remember, Suni is not just Woody's wife, but she was once his stepdaughter. Also, I did not care for Annie Hall. Didn't care for it. I thought it insisted upon itself. But that's just me. Let's jump over to weird news, shall we? Police in England, who arrested 15 people in a massive heroin and cocaine bust, were assisted by an unlikely witness, the dealer's pet parrot. The parrot was captured on video shouting, 2 for $25, 2 for $25, which was code for the price of their dope, according to a report published this week by the New York Post. Other videos showed the parrot playing in piles of drug money. Thanks to their fine feathered friend, the gang of 15 from Blackpool are likely to spend decades in prison, with the first suspect being given 19.5 years in jail. Meanwhile, the parrot has been relocated but continues to perform a wide variety of tricks in exchange for a small bump now and then. Over to pop culture. A new documentary about the Delphi murders premiered this week on Hulu. It's titled Capturing Their Killer, The Girls on the High Bridge, and reportedly gives plenty of time to crazy conspiracy theorists who believed Odin worshippers were actually responsible for the deaths of Abby Williams and Libby German. It also features an interview with the wife of the actual murderer, Richard Allen. His wife, Kathy, says in the documentary, quote, Ricky is a wonderful, caring, compassionate father, non-judgmental, very giving. He has good morals, end quote. You know, except for all the killing. I'm only telling you about this documentary because I'm asking you to skip this one. I'm going to give this one a pass and recommend you do the same. Let's not give these guys any downloads. And the True Crime Book of the Week this week is by a new friend of mine, Lindsay Wade, who I met at the West Sound Crime Con. She's a former detective who solved a cold case murder out in Washington. She's going to be at CrimeCon Denver, by the way. If you're coming, you should meet her and get a copy of this book. The book is called In My DNA by Lindsay Wade. Here's the write-up. In 1986, a young girl in Tacoma, Washington, Jennifer Bastian, went out for a bike ride in a local park and never came home. Later, her body was found mutilated and lifeless, but the case went cold and Jennifer's killer went free. The senseless killing of an innocent girl left an indelible black cloud over Tacoma for 3 decades and was seared into the memory of young Lindsay Wade, also from Tacoma, who went on to become the detective who would crack the case. Horrifying crimes against women and girls motivated Wade's 21-year law enforcement career and ignited her relentless pursuit of justice for victims. Journey with Detective Wade as she investigates shocking sex crimes and homicides in the Tacoma area, where she has been crucial in bringing new DNA evidence into each cold case. From serial rapists to cold-blooded killers, Wade never backs down from the challenges these investigations present, even adding Ted Bundy's DNA to the national database. At the heart of every lead and DNA test throughout the book, Lindsay's desire to find Jennifer Bastian's murderer never relents. Check it out. And that's the show for this week. It was a shaky one, but we made it. We made it through. Not just the week, but the show. I'll be back next Friday. Please join me. In the meantime, go enjoy the last couple weeks of summer before school starts. Some of you are already back in school. And in the words of the incomparable Murray Saul, the godfather of Cleveland radio, we gotta get down, damn it. True Crime This Week is a Fearful Symmetry production. Photo and artwork are licensed through Shutterstock. If you like the cut of my jib, I have another podcast you might enjoy called The Philosophy of Crime, in which I attempt to solve the big questions behind our true crime obsession by looking to philosophy for answers. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. Sit, Brownie, sit. Good dog.